first, before we move any further, I want to talk about how do we, as Piikani First Nation, and like all other First Nations, we are an oral culture. So how does Piikani itself, as a society, civilization of people, and the practice of oral practices, how do you put the two together so that we can validate person, place, or thing, or even stories as real? Because it's so important to any civilized society in this world to validate their own realities and what's real. So from that, I would like to say, and later on I'm going to talk about language, but just now I'd like to talk about how do we validate in an oral culture what is real. And I'm going to tell you a real story. But before I tell you the real story, this is how we validate it. When I talk to my grandparents, my great-grandparents, and relatives and our elders from our community that came from an oral culture, I used to tell them, how can I say this is mine, I own it? If I went to the grocery store and I bought a can of beans, when I come home I got a receipt that says this is my can of beans. But how would I say in an oral culture? And they said, well, you know, you gotta look at our way is venue, action, language, and song. We believe as Piikani that Creator created the whole universe. But within that universe, the spirit of the universe, Creator gave that spirit, made the universe come alive with a spirit. And we identify with that spirit through language and song. That's the power. The song ties us to the land, to the ground. We are part of the universe. So songs are so important in our culture. Songs are physical documentation of that spirit, of that authority, of that privilege to own or to have something. So venue, action, language, and song is the process of validating ownership. If I was given a plant to heal with, first of all, the venue would be the users of that plant. They'll come together because they own the song. And I would go into that venue and ask. Secondly, I would go into that venue and I would prove myself with that plant to say, I know how to use this plant. Thirdly is language, and that's where the stories are so important. I can tell the story of that plant and creation story and the story of how it comes to a medicine. And thirdly, after they test me, and I pass the test and I'm sanctioned, then I'm given a song from all of their society, a society song that says, yes, he's proven himself and now he's a healer with that plant. So in an oral culture, when I go out in the community and people ask me about the plant, I would say, this plant, the healing components of this plant was given to me, and here's my song. And once I sing my song, it's like showing my degree or my piece of paper that says, this is how I got it. And that's validation. In an oral culture, That's how we validate person, place, thing, and story through venue, action, language, and song. All right, what's your next question?
So, Dr. Reg Crowshoe, what does Blackfoot language, or what does language mean to you?
What does language mean to me? Ni chipo. My language is Blackfoot, but I also speak my mom's language, which is Neopus, which is Nez Chief Joseph took on the battle in the United States so the government won't displace him from his land. And he used his language, and we use our Blackfoot language. So language is so important. When Creator created the universe, where Creator put us in this world, where Creator put us, right from that geographic location where Creator put us in this world, that's where the language came from. The language came from the land. We would say a rock, we would say a tree, we would say a plant, we would say human beings. The language came from that, and as the language evolved from the environment that we lived in, it also came with the spirit. The spirit is the knowledge and the power that we get from the environment of natural law. And that's how important language is. Once we took the language and we made stories, those stories, we used our language, which had spirit, but we also used song, which had spirit, and spirit represents that our connection to the creation and the power that's part of our interaction from human to human or creation to creation. That power in the spirit, in the language, and in our stories. Our stories, we would say, are our absolute laws. When we tell our story with our language and our songs, those are absolute laws from defining where we lived in. And our environment is our natural laws. That's Creator's laws. We have our absolute laws through our stories. And it's through those stories, the wisdom, the traditional knowledge, that those stories we use to develop today how we might develop our practices to validate the new worlds that we walk into today. So it is important. Language is important as natural law because it is there, but it is also important to our people because language tells the stories that puts together and validates our real stories as real, and those are our natural or our absolute laws. And then from those absolute laws, we have to go to our practice laws. How we practice to validate something real. Whether it's education, whether it's medicine, whether it's governance, those practices live in the shadows of those absolute laws. So today, this is how we survive as people. Our language is critical, that we have to maintain our languages, our songs, and our stories so we can validate ourselves as Nichitapi or real people.
Thank you. And that ties in, like you said, you had a structured way of looking at that.
Yeah.
And to say later, to bring back that validation, with even that can of beans example that you had earlier, I mean, of course, storytelling and culture is so much more than a can of beans, but to use that as, like, that's just our Western idea of ownership. Like,
right.
Thank you.